Everybody, thank you so much for sticking with Coffee with Stan today. What an amazing conversation we just had with Congressman Chris Pappas, who's doing such amazing work up in New Hampshire. And I keep checking my text messages, and Representative Sharice Davids, Representative Andrea Salinas, everyone is really cluing in on the work they're doing locally. And that leads me to my next guest, who does not yet have a congressional seat, but is running for the 4th Congressional District, Nassau County. Laura Gillen spent much of her life actually doing things for others. Volunteering. I can't wait to ask you a couple of questions about your time working for St. Mother Teresa and your time in Calcutta. She then went into work in law, focusing on domestic violence. And in 2017, and this part really struck me, Laura became the first Democrat to be elected Hempstead Town Supervisor in 112 years. And this idea of bipartisanship and working together on real problems without politics for just a moment is what we're doing at Coffee with Stan. So welcome to you, Laura Gillen. I look forward to calling you Representative or Congresswoman, but today it is still Laura Gillen, the individual, and I am welcoming you to Coffee with Stan. How are you?
Thank you, Stan. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, I'm so excited to have the conversation. I mean, I can throw a rock from Manhattan and hit your beautiful county. And, you know, I think that there's so much we're going to talk about today because you've done so much work representing the people in your community already at the local level. And I'll want to hear more about that in just a minute. But taking it down to what you're fighting for today and this seat in Congress, one of the things that, of course, has been on the front of everyone's mind who lives in this area is the SALT deductions. And the fact that this changed in a real bread and butter way for so many of our families, the ability to raise a family and to have these deductions that just make good common sense. So can we start there? Can we start with what your thoughts are around this and your experience around how these deductions work and how you will represent us when elected towards that end?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. So look, in New York and in this district, we pay among the highest property taxes in the country. And that state and local tax deduction really made a big impact on a lot of the families here. Bottom line, there's this myth out there that only benefits really rich people, and it's not a benefit to the middle and the working class. But that's simply not true here, where we pay such high property taxes. So we need to get that. We need to get that deduction back. Donald Trump has now said that he's going to give it back. Well, he's the one who took it away in the first place, and the Republican chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee said there's no way they're going to give it back if the Republicans control the House. So we need to make sure, this will be priority day one for me, to make sure we get that full deduction back for people living here, because it really impacts our bottom line. When I was town supervisor, I got elected with bipartisan support. You don't become the first Democrat in 112 years without getting folks from the other side to support you. And so for me, it was really important to address issues that were impacting my constituents' bottom line. I was the only supervisor in recent memory who consistently lowered taxes on my watch. Now the township is back in the hands of the Republicans, and they just raised taxes over 12%. So I will bring that same fiscally responsible attitude towards Congress and make sure we get that SALT deduction back for families here.
So how did you do that? How did you win after 112 years without a Democrat in that seat? Can you, because that really is what we're hearing and talking about today, is we're all in this together. And,
Right.
and for the most part, if you can get past the first 2 minutes with any human being, you're going to find much more in common than you are going to find different. But we live in a 90-second world. We live in a 2-minute soundbite world, which is why we're taking the time to sit down for longer today and really get to know you and understand how you would serve our country in the Congress. So if you could distill it down to one or two thoughts, how did you take that position after 112 years with no one from the Democratic Party in that position?
So look, it was a grassroots campaign. I will say, like every door you knock, every postcard you write can really make the difference. There were only about, I say 7 people who thought I could win that race, and most of them were related to me. No one would donate to my campaign. I did not have an office. I would joke, I would say, let's go to the alfresco office, which was a gazebo in a park in my town, where I'd meet people who were engaged, and I'd give them literature to go hand out at doors or at train stations. And I think also because I knew a lot of my neighbors. I live in, probably my village is more Republican than Democrat, but people knew me, and they knew me as somebody who really just wanted the best interests of the community members to be advanced in town hall. There was also a lot of corruption going on at the time. And interestingly, there was a little internecine war going on with the Republicans in town hall. So I took advantage of that and reached out to some Republicans who were serving and said, hey, I think we could work together. Why don't you get on board? I had a Republican who endorsed me in that race. And I think all of that kind of gave rise to me winning this almost impossible race.
And then once you won that impossible race, as we did our research, and you talked about it just a moment ago, you were able to get the budget under control and allow for taxes to be in a much better place than you found them. So again, in this kind of distilling way, was there any one thing in particular that you were able to address that you can share with us?
Sure. I mean, I think also having private sector experience, I practiced commercial litigation for a long time. That private sector experience really helped me in my role as supervisor. I hired really great people to work on my staff, and we just took aim at waste. There was so much waste and grift in our local government. We went and I said to one of my deputies, take a look at what our exposure is, our liability exposure is for all these lawsuits that are pending against us. And he went to our broker and he was like, he can't answer the question. And I said, why not? And he said, because he doesn't use computers. I'm not joking you. And I said, bring me the contract that we have with this vendor. And it was a contract that hadn't been awarded since 1987. That's when it was awarded. So it hadn't been put out to bid. Interest rates were low. We carry a ton of municipal debt. Let's refinance let's refinance our debt and bring down our interest rate and save taxpayers millions of dollars. This is like common sense 101, but they hadn't done it because there was just inertia. They just didn't care. It was just about handing out jobs to friends and family. It was not about serving the people. So that's the attitude that I brought to work every day, a good government attitude. Like, let's solve problems for all my constituents. I don't care what party you are. I want to save everybody some money. And so just bringing fiscal discipline to the town of Hempstead is how we were able to lower, by reining in that waste, we were able to lower taxes.
Well, I am excited to have such a conversation with someone so intelligent and pragmatic. We need more of you, and hopefully we will have more of you in just a couple of short weeks, literally 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
One of the areas that I know you talk a lot about is the environment. And of course, Long Island is one of the most beautiful places in the country, whether it's being on the beach or being out on one of the vineyards. Long Island is gorgeous. How have you looked at what's going on between beach erosion and issues in the inlets that I know affect your potential constituents in Congress and, of course, all of our neighbors? Are there areas there that you're looking at, or maybe you've already dealt with some of these in your previous role that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. I mean, look, we all remember Superstorm Sandy.
Sure do.
In my district, folks actually saw their neighbor's house be washed away. And we remember that panic afterwards, waiting for gas, not knowing when power was going to come on. And it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when the next superstorm comes and hits us, because we know climate change is real. Well, most of us do. And that we've seen what's been going on in the South, and that's going to come our way. So what we need to do is make sure we're doing everything we can to make our communities more storm resilient. It's something that I had to address as town supervisor. I worked with our partners at the federal level, the Army Corps of Engineers, to rebuild our dunes, and to create jetties, to prevent erosion on our beaches. We also did a dredging project to constitute a lot of our beaches here, which is one of the most beautiful parts of this district. I also worked with my partners at the state to do a lot of flood mitigation work, to make sure there's so much of this district that is coastal community, to make sure we were reinstalling bulkheads, replacing bulkheads that hadn't been replaced in decades, and doing other products to harden our shoreline to have greater resilience for our homes. Also working with our partners at the state and the federal level, FEMA and Empire Rising, to make sure that homeowners who were impacted by Sandy had raised their house the way they needed to in the event of another storm, so they won't face the same kind of damage. And that's going to be an ongoing issue for this district, because there are homes that have not been raised, and we still have a lot of flooding problems. So we need to make sure all cylinders are firing, the local level, the state level, and the federal level, to get the funds that we need into these communities to make them more resilient, so we'll be better able to handle the next storm.
So, Laura, as we get to know you a little bit better, I hope you don't mind me jumping back in time a little bit. How did you find yourself in Calcutta with Mother Teresa's mission and working in a way to bring yourself to the needs of others?
Well, so public service was something that I've always gotten great satisfaction in. You know, from when I was a young person, I worked at a camp for handicapped children and adults. When I graduated from college, I always feel like it's incumbent upon me to give back. It was the height of the AIDS epidemic when I graduated Georgetown, and I thought one way I could help people was getting involved with the gay men's health crisis. At that time, people who were suffering with this unknown condition were being stigmatized, and they were being treated as outcasts and not getting the love and compassion that they deserved. So I got involved with GMHC. I became a buddy to a man who was living with HIV, and it was a wonderful program. And then I had gotten the travel bug. I had done some traveling. I wanted to go abroad, but I said I wanted there to be a service component. And I literally walked down the block in Manhattan. I was working at an entertainment agency at the time. And I went to Barnes & Noble, and I got this book called Volunteer Vacations. And I started flipping through it, and I saw an entry that said you could go to Calcutta and work for Mother Teresa. So I went and I saw my best friend that night. I was like, I know what I'm doing next year. I'm going to work for Mother Teresa. She's like, that is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But I did it. I saved my money, and I went to Calcutta, and I worked in the Missionaries of Charity's Home for the Dying, which is called Kaligat. And it was not as horrible as it sounds, because a lot of people came there and they were dying, but they were dying because they just couldn't get an antibiotic. So happily, many of the patients who came there were returned back to their family after they had access to medical care. So it was a really, really rewarding part of my life, and it's part of what moves me forward. I really do believe that government service is about lifting others up. I really enjoyed being town supervisor because I saw all these great programs that were being atrophied or just not utilized to help residents. We could give out housing vouchers. The prior administration sat on 400 housing vouchers. We have a lot of communities that really have struggled with economic needs, and those housing vouchers could have helped families get into homes for their children. And because of just incompetence, they weren't given out. So I'm looking to bring my can-do attitude to Congress, because there are a lot of problems that we need solved, and I'm looking forward to getting to work, again, in a bipartisan fashion, reaching across the aisle and making sure we start delivering for the people of this district and for the people of this country, because they're sick of people fighting each other and not delivering anything. And so I want to be able to come back to my constituents and say, okay, you sent me to Congress, and this is what I did for you.
You know, one of the things that I know that you worked hard on previously, and you'll have a new and different voice on in the Congress, is education. And your district and really much of Long Island is known for having excellent schools. And I truly believe that education is our ticket to a better future. More educated citizens make more educated decisions. We can all disagree, but at least whatever we're disagreeing on, we have been educated in such a way that we can talk about it in a way that takes, again, less than that 1 or 2 minutes to get into. One of the things that did not happen in the previous Congress was the ability to have federally mandated pre-K and federally funded, pre-K and federally funded 2 years of college, community college. And I know that the schools, particularly around where you are so excellent. Can you help us to understand what you will be able to do when you think about education at the federal level, given your success at the local level?
Sure. I mean, first of all, we have to start by not abolishing the Department of Education, which is a part of Project 2025. So we'll start there. But making sure that we're directing resources to schools. You talk about universal pre-K. Pre-K is not optional anymore. I mean, when I was growing up, like nursery school, some kids went, some kids didn't. Didn't really matter because in kindergarten, you were like learning you had nap time. Like now in kindergarten, you are learning how to read. Like you need to know phonics before you get to kindergarten. And if you don't have access to pre-K, you are already behind on day 1 in kindergarten. So this is not something really that's optional. And for those children who don't have access to that, they're already starting at a disadvantage, which is what we shouldn't want for anybody's child. You talked about higher education. The cost of higher education is staggering. I have 4 kids. One just graduated college, one's in college, and 2 are on their way.
This is an excellent time for you to be in public service then.
The cost of so many families is staggering. So we need to make sure we're strengthening our community colleges and our state universities, because that is, for many families, the only affordable pathway to higher education. We also need to work with trade schools and with our labor unions to make sure there are apprenticeship programs, because not everybody needs to go to college. They might not choose to go to college, particularly if it comes with a $200,000, $250,000 price tag. There are plenty of people who can make a good living going to a trade school, becoming a plumber. Everybody's always going to need a plumber, and sometimes they're very hard to find. So there should be other pathways to people to be able to achieve a comfortable life, middle-class lifestyle without taking on all that debt that will saddle them for the rest of their lives.
And what is it that we have to change that allows for the trade school funding to be in place? Is it a missing part of a current legislation? Like, why is that not already something that's happening today?
So I think we have to just foster those programs. First of all, a lot of folks aren't even aware that they're out there and that's available to them.
Yeah.
As town supervisor, I would go into local high schools and have mock job interviews with some of the students there. And I met a young man who was so brilliant, and he said he was working 3 jobs just to help his mother pay the rent, and college was not an option for him. And I hooked him up with a union, and he got into their apprenticeship program. So we need to foster communication, and we need to make sure that funds are directed. Sometimes programs like here, we have a program called BOCES, which is more trade focused. It's sort of special needs students, and as well as students who might be more interested in the arts. For example, they sponsor a school for the arts, or in the building trades. We need to make sure those are not casualties of budget cuts.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you a minute here in case I didn't touch on anything that is burning inside of you, because what I'm certainly taking away from this conversation is we need you in the halls of Congress representing not just your district, but all of us across the country to help the programs that we've described come to light. Is there anything that we didn't talk about in our time together?
Look, I think we covered some important topics. We could talk about many, many more, but I don't know if we have time on this broadcast.
Yeah.
I just want viewers to take away that I am going to go to the halls of Congress to serve all of you. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. I want to make things better for all of us, for my kids and for their future. I want to make New York more affordable so people stop fleeing here. It's a wonderful place to be, and I want people to be able to afford to live here. And if you like what I've had to say, we are very close to Manhattan. There are 14 days left. You can knock on doors, you can make phone calls, and you can help by contributing if those other options are not your cup of tea. So thank you, and thank you for having me on, Stan.
Thank you so much. We will be better if you and when you are elected, so we will look forward to that. We will also look forward to, in just a moment, joining Representative Pat Ryan. We're staying in New York for the rest of this afternoon. That's coming up at 2:30. Lori Gillen, you go get them. And I
Thank
hope
you.
that everyone who's listening now takes away the same idea. You are a smart, capable, and really thoughtful human being, and it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Talk to you later.